Awesome. So thank you, Megan, for joining us today on our Fresh Perspectives talk. We do this once a week. We were doing it 3 times a week, and that became really hard. Uh, but luckily, we had some really good insight during probably like the height of the storm, I would say. And so,
Oh,
I'm
cool.
really glad to actually have somebody with some different perspectives. A renowned, acclaimed Woman of the Year for San Antonio. So
Thanks.
I dig it. So yeah, I mean, for those that see this later, really, I'm just, if you don't mind kind of giving your background and just kind of intro as to what you do. I mean, we used to work together a lot more. Now I kind of just see
Sure.
you through the grapevine. And so I'm sure there's a lot going on, and the people would love
Tons.
to know. Yeah.
Yeah. So, thanks, Ryan, and thanks to Launch SA for having me. I don't know where to start. So I'll say before the storm, before this, my day job is as president and CEO of CHR Partners. And so we are a nonprofit organization that develops affordable housing throughout the country, primarily in the state of Texas. Um, so what that means is we are actually building apartment communities for low-income individuals. And then my staff provides critical social services for the folks living in there. And that's everything from after-school youth leadership and mentorship, scholarly tutoring, to college readiness, workforce development, through financial literacy and some of our, basic life skills that are required to maintain self-sufficiency. So that was my day job. I've always been pretty entrepreneurial, as Ryan mentioned. We've worked together in other capacities, and so as an entrepreneur, having one job is never enough. So I teach at Trinity University. So I'm currently teaching social innovation, and so the idea being we can attack social issues in our community through business-backed solutions. So my class focuses on creating businesses that drive social change without relying on philanthropy to stay alive. And then I own a couple of side firms. So Rise Civic Consulting is my technology company that I started with my partner, Juan Cano. He and I kind of came together as real estate professionals to think through how data could be brought to the service of cities, particularly in San Antonio, where we're located. The city of San Antonio has a tremendous amount of data around affordable housing, but it's not organized. And in an effort to create true understanding towards driving better policy, we've created a technology solution as part of the mayor's housing framework. So we are step 2 in the process, and we are creating the San Antonio Affordable Housing Portal, or known as Housing Based San Antonio. So that's our project right now that we're working on. It's currently in development with our tech team, and will be coming to San Antonio pretty soon. The other thing we just launched literally today is Bear Aid. Bear Aid is a medical service organization. We have launched COVID-19 testing for all. So,
That's cool.
yeah. So my partner designed a booth, a zero contact booth, where it was done, and it's actually another partnership with 40 under 40 recipients. So I was Woman of the Year last year, but Dr. Ray Altamirano is Man of the Year this year, and Juan Cano, my partner, was a 40 under 40 recipient. So we got together and created Bear Aid. But Dr. Ray brought to us this challenge that as an emergency room physician, they were running through PPE, which is personal protective equipment, like nobody's business. And I think we've all heard this on the news or in social media, that personal protective equipment, masks, gloves, wipes, everything is just really, gowns, it's hard to come by. And so as people were entering clinics, testing facilities, emergency rooms, hospitals, they were literally getting rid of all of their PPE that they were wearing every time they saw a new patient. And in a pandemic, that becomes pretty critical. So we needed to create a solution where one set of PPE could be used for multiple patients. And so we have a zero contact booth that allows the medical assistant to step in and do a nasal pharyngeal swab with zero contact with the patient. We're doing it through a drive-through model. And so we launched it today at the emergency care clinic at the Pearl. So we're testing Monday through Friday, 9 to 2 p.m. You can go to berry.com and schedule your test. It is for a fee, but we get test results in 24 hours, which is
wow, that's really great.
Yeah, that's almost 150% faster than Metro Health. And it comes with a telehealth visit. So one of the other things to think about is, although the county is offering free testing, you can get your results positive or negative, and then kind of you're on your own to figure out through your own medical network how to take care of yourself. Our test comes with a telehealth visit with our doctor so that you have a plan and a referral on how to take care of yourself, positive or negative. So we really wanted to give the full package to make sure that we were being responsible in how we were caring for the community. And although there's a fee for testing with us, all of our proceeds are going to provide discounted tests for military, frontline workers, and low-income residents so that we can participate in solving the problem. We have one mission at Buried, and that's test everyone. So I know that's a long-winded answer to your question, but I'm doing a lot right now.
That is, no, it's, I'm really glad that I didn't have to provide that intro because there was a lot of stuff in there. I mean, it sounds, I guess the common theme across the board is that it sounds like you really care about the community, about seeing an impact, about, making a difference. And I'm kind of curious, really, where did that start for you? Was it?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to start with that one. But
no. Like it's actually a pretty simple answer. I didn't figure it out till grad school, but the answer to that question is every time a new opportunity comes my way, or anytime I think about work satisfaction, I really think about two things. One, I don't want any day to be like the day before. I'm not built as a human being to push paper, even though I do a lot of pushing of paper when I build apartment complexes.
For sure.
But I'm not a paper pusher by nature. I don't do well with monotony. And so I really wanted a job that was project-based, that was project-oriented, that every project was a little bit different than the one before. And then the second criteria for, kind of job satisfaction was every day I get to help somebody. No matter what I work on, no matter what job I take, no matter what client I take on as a consultant, if I satisfy those two criteria, I know I'm making an impact in my community, I'm helping someone, and I'm keeping myself entertained, for lack of a better term.
No, that's very noble. And I mean, I'm sure that plays into how you get to be Woman of the Year, what was it, 2019? So
2019.
I mean, that's obviously very refreshing and seeing it, because I mean, I think most people would say it's hard to find folks that are inherently caring. So it's good that you're actually providing a value and changing people's lives, and that's really amazing. So as you think about sort of the model that you're talking about, social innovation, I know that you said that the housing that you do is through a nonprofit.
Yeah.
And I guess, especially in a time like now, it seems like charity is everywhere, but then it's also sort of convoluted because it's everywhere. And like, what do you give to? What's the difference being made? And then you have some people that are just, from a donor side saying, you know what, all my funds are tied in weird places. I don't feel comfortable giving anything out. Not now, maybe not for the next 3 years, based on all the stuff that's going on. So how do you build something that's sustainable but solves a problem? I feel like that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. So I think, I'll start here and say that in traditional for-profit businesses, you're selling a commodity, and that commodity renders revenue, and then that revenue covers expenses, and then you have profit or loss. It's like pretty straightforward. It's very linear, right? In social innovation, or what I would call social enterprise, it's a little different. There's like a dichotomy in the business line where you have to have two different businesses running simultaneously, and one feeds the other. So I'll use my housing organization as an example. We're 100% sustainable organization, so we don't fundraise, we don't write grants. If a grant opportunity comes our way, it's usually a one-off, and we don't turn money away. Don't get me wrong, but it's usually for a pilot program or a special event or something like that. But our day-to-day business is covered 100% with our revenue. And so what I mean by that is we have a singular business line of building apartments, right? That's pretty straightforward. We secure land, we develop, we design with architects, we go out and get construction lending, we use the tax credit program with the federal government in the state of Texas, and we finance a development. But there's revenue in that, right? There's developer fees, there's general contracting fees, there's revenue to be made in building apartments, whether it's for low-income families or not. Now, obviously, as a nonprofit, we only develop for low-income residents. But my point being, it's a business line. And so we take the profit and revenue from that business line to feed our other business, which is the social impact. And that is our resident services, our programming, and all of that jazz that we do. And so as you think about running a social enterprise or creating a social enterprise, most people have jumped on the Tom's model, right? Buy one, give one kind of thing, which is a really easy model to copy. But the other thing too is you just have to really make sure that there's a logical nexus between your two business lines. They have to make sense, right? So all of our social impact is done inside of the buildings we build, right? So rather than having us spread too thin or trying to partner with another agency that does something different than what we do, the key to that success is not only the revenue line, but it's the logical nexus between the revenue line and the social impact. Again, there's another great example with the San Antonio Food Bank. They have a culinary arts program. They have their mobile mercado. They have their catering business, right? All of those businesses make money, but that money feeds back into the food bank's nonprofit side, providing food for the community. So having a catering business that feeds into a food bank makes a lot of sense. Having a dry cleaner that feeds into the food bank doesn't make any sense. So I always start there. I always say, one, you have to have a good or service that you can sell. And the second part is it has to have a logical nexus to what you're trying to achieve.
No, that makes perfect sense. I feel like, at launch, I say we see a lot of people that come in and say, oh, I want to start a nonprofit, or, oh, I want to do something to help the community. Mm-hmm. And you dig into it and it's like, the person wants to give. You're like, well, where are you going to give from? And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, well, how does that doesn't work, right? Like at some point you're going to bleed yourself dry, and the impact that you'll make is only going to go so far. So it's a different model, and I'm kind of curious. I mean, like, do you have to be a good business person before you can do something like that? How do you even get to the mindset of oh, okay, this is how I make the business of the thing that I want to help? Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. So I will say, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but truthfully, I don't care. I think some of the nonprofits that are best set up to fail, and let me repeat that, best set up to fail, are the ones that have social workers at the helm. And so don't get me wrong, like having professional social workers, having professional caregivers in leadership positions is critical to how you deliver services, is critical to how you set up your models. It's critical to how you set up your processes. But if somebody is in a leadership position who doesn't fundamentally understand how you make money and then how that money is best distributed, you will fail. You will fail because without a business, without limited business acumen, basic business acumen, there are things you will not know to consider. I'll use my own organization as an example. My predecessor was a social worker at heart, very passionate, very, very dedicated to the mission, very dedicated to the employees, but had no business background. And so really left the organization in a great deal of distress as it related to our tax position with the IRS, our relationship, etc. And so I think it's critical. And so for folks that are coming to Launch SA with this idea, an idea of any kind, I think they really should take advantage of a lot of the education you guys offer through your programming to just understand the basics of business. And that, everything from just understanding how to read basic financial statements to understanding basic marketing costs and basic marketing efforts.
Yeah.
And a lot of the education you guys provide, sorry, little infomercial here, but a lot of the education you guys provide is how to do this on little to no budget. And so for startups, that's super important. And so and that's the other thing. I think if you have a really good business plan and if you have a really clear vision, I mean, CHR does almost zero marketing. And that's because I don't want to market myself to the general public. I have very defined populations or very defined targets of who I want to do business with or who we should be doing business with. And I target my efforts there. So rather than having your traditional 15% marketing budget, I'm much more strategic with our dollars in how I communicate with my potential customers.
Okay. So, I'm kind of curious. We talked about the side, like, well, if you don't have a good business background, then, you're probably not ready yet. But then I'm curious if on the other side of it, if you're purely a business professional, do you feel like you're like 100% better suited, or, are there still issues with, like, I guess, where does that mindset fall, or do you have any opinions or insights on that?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like to answer that question, I think it's probably a generational thing. And I hate to say that, but I think our generation just requires more of their career, right? So where our grandparents and our parents were very focused on long-term sustainability, meaning I'm going to get a job, I'm going to be a company man for 30 plus years. I'm going to retire with a pension, and then I'm just going to live the American dream. We've learned in our current political climate, and frankly now what we're expecting after a massive pandemic, that our future isn't secured, right? We have to go secure our own future. Being a company man isn't enough anymore. And so while doing, if our companies can't offer us security long-term through pensions, if our companies can't guarantee us employment under all circumstances for 30 plus years, there's got to be something else that they're guaranteeing us. And from now, what most millennials, what most Gen Xers, Gen Yers, what most folks are looking for is that impact. How am I changing my environment? How am I changing my community? How am I making the world a better place than I found it? How am I leaving the world a better place than I found it, right? That's what our companies can offer now, because what they can't offer what they offered our parents and grandparents anymore.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I feel like there's also in sort of, even if you're not interested in business, right, there's also that local perspective or local feel. You want to have that community element that makes a difference. I think, back in the day, it was the small town feel of, hey, we're all in the same town and I'm going to go buy from Joe's Hardware or whatever. and that kind of disappeared, and we had these big box things, and whatever. But I think we're kind of coming back to that. How homegrown, how local can I get with my decisions, with my
Mm-hmm.
impact, with my the differences that I can make, even if it's just on my block. And so you know it's definitely a transitioning mindset. I think we'll see how that
Yeah.
all fluctuates over time.
No,
um
but to answer your question, I don't know that a business, like business mind, like a strictly business minded or business oriented professional is required to create social enterprise or to create social impact.
mhm,
I do think that I do think that business um, education, um, practical business acumen, I think that is necessary and required. So you as an individual need to be prepared to educate yourself, and be willing to educate yourself on certain things, regardless of your inclinations, right? So you want to be at the helm of something to change the world, fantastic, but you need to be able to understand these basics before jumping in with both feet.
mhm. Yeah, no, that I like that a lot. I mean, it seems like personally I prefer this model way more than like the fundraising charity
Sure,
ball gala, you
sure.
know schmoozing kind of thing. I mean, I feel like maybe some pieces of that are still relevant and necessary. I mean, being able to have a conversation and carry it forward. But I mean, is that a shift that you see on the whole, or do you think that like people looking for more sustainable avenues, or do you still think that it's a pretty common model to say, hey, I know these eight, wealthy people, and if I can convince them through a really swank gala or something like that, like, hey, we'll have it made, we'll feed all the children or something.
Okay, so I think it depends on where you are, frankly. I think in San Antonio, um, there's still there's still we still have five rich dudes in our city, and everybody goes and asks them for money.
Right.
Um, and there's still this idea of, um, the 65 plus year old who has made a tremendous amount of money and likes getting dressed up to go to the gala and socialize. And it's about maintaining network and social presence and so forth. Um, there's a lot of academic theory around philanthropy in such that it's like groupthink. If my
Hmm.
friend in my neighborhood gives, then I should give because I'm associated and I want to be associated, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think we're quite there yet where we are going to get away from the idea of people wanting to give as a mechanism for social, ladder climbing
Hmm.
or for social awareness. That being said, I think give it a decade, 5 to 10 years, and I could be off now because we're going to try and climb out of this like ridiculous recession.
Right.
Um, but give it a decade, and I think as our generation gets to a above mid-level career, we get into our mid 40s, we've been in the employment industry for 20 some odd years now, and we now decide what's important. We're now the ones sitting, our network is sitting on city council, our network is making decisions about policies. Our friends from college are sitting in influential decision making positions in city and county government. Yeah, I think we're going to see a shift in how we do things. I think we'll see a shift in what we demand out of nonprofits. I think even now we're demanding more metrics than we have in the past. So the shift's coming. I just think as we hit critical things like pandemics and other things, that might delay the time frame.
Yeah, for sure. That
Because
you
I'm
brought up.
certainly cool not dressing up. Like I'm certainly cool with it. I don't
I
need
dig it.
another plate of rubber chicken. So
Yeah, exactly. It's like, man, if this was like some sort of like, culinary endeavor, was getting an experience, maybe, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I
mean,
think,
I'm happy to give you $50 and you give me no chicken in
yeah.
exchange.
How about I give you $50 and then, somebody cooks me something unique.
Sure.
I'm cool with that, even if it's small, $50, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Um, anyway, so you brought up like the academic side. I never really thought of that. I didn't realize anybody was studying this stuff, so I figured
Oh, yeah.
that's all new to me. But that's pretty interesting things to go and review later, probably. Um, so as you really think through, um, you mentioned the metrics that people are asking for. I find one of the hardest things is really explaining to people the depth of the metrics, right? And it's so
Yeah.
hard to explain impact because there's just going to be some nuances that are misunderstood. So, for I always give the example of like, a lot of people are like, well, how many jobs were created through, Launch SA's Entrepreneurship Center? And it's like, well, I mean, how does that relate to entrepreneurship activity? I mean, maybe that person just
Yeah.
wants to own their business themselves, and maybe they're doing really great. It's
Yeah.
really hard to correlate the two things, like just because you hired a person, does that mean that they're getting paid a ton? I don't know. It means, all these
Yeah.
weird things, so hard to nuance, or like even the idea that somehow it happens overnight, you know
Mhm.
uh how do you what's the best way you found of really articulating value or impact? Or I mean, is it through
Mhm.
those minor stories? Is it, have you found strong, like, oh, these are the correlations that really matter? Is it one-on-one conversation? I mean, how does
Yeah.
it
So
what
it
do you
depends
do?
on who I'm talking to. So I'll be real blunt, right?
Mhm.
Because why not? Uh, so if I'm, so I play in the world of government funding, right? So like I'm not writing grants to foundations. I'm not putting a picture of a poor low income family on a mailer and sending it to every, Tom, Dick, and Harry to ask them for $25 a month. Like we're not
Mhm.
doing that. We're,
Right.
whatever. Um, and so I play in the world of government funding. And so for me, the distinction is, am I talking to a Democrat or am I talking to a Republican?
Mhm.
And so if I'm talking to a Democrat, I'm talking about my services, right? So I talk about my engagement percentage, right? So how many of my units per development are actually engaging in services, which means if I have a 324 unit development and I have 150 units participating, then I've got just under 50% participation, right? So I talk about how many of the folks that we're actually touching. I talk about the number of touches per family per year, meaning, unit 3208 came to 6 services this year and their credit score improved 250 points, et cetera, right? When I'm talking to a Republican, I am completely talking about the economic development component of affordable housing, how affordable housing is putting units on the ground, construction, jobs, taxable real estate. And I'm talking about for every 400 families I put on the ground in an area, that's a justification for a Target, a Walmart, a fast food restaurant to come in and create commerce in that area.
Mhm.
Um, and so it really depends on your audience. And actually, I'm part of leadership San Antonio steering committee this year, and so we're LSA 2020 or LSA 45 class 45 just had a day on what we're calling Be United and the idea of engagement of community. And SA 2020 gave us a presentation, and Molly Cox was talking about the issue right now around metrics and collaboration is not an issue of nonprofits aren't measuring what we're doing, and the issue isn't nonprofits aren't collaborating. The issue is funders haven't decided what they want to impact.
Yeah.
They say I want to impact entrepreneurship, but what does that mean?
What does that look
Do you
like?
want to
Yeah.
create jobs? Do you want to create more number of businesses? Do you want to create investment opportunities at X number of dollars per year?
Yeah.
What do you actually want to change as a funder? Because if you tell me that, I can measure that. But don't just say, I want to support entrepreneurship in San Antonio. and then ask for relative vague metrics that don't correlate with each other.
Right. Yeah, that's I mean, I think that's the beauty. That's like entrepreneurship 101 right there, is like define your audience,
Yeah.
Understand them, and then, speak to them like your target market, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard when your target market doesn't have a clear vision of what they want. So yeah,
Yeah.
it becomes very difficult, especially around philanthropy. I mean, we all kind of, I guess, we want sort of warm and fuzzies, but then when things go weird or times get tough, you're like, well, I don't know, like, do I really need? I don't need that heartfelt story. I need to see action and impact and, like, heads and beds, or whatever that common adage
Yeah.
is.
No, of
But
course. Yeah.
it's weird. It's like it's a moving target, and where do you fall in that? So, but hey, I guess that's the world. That's also entrepreneurship in that sense too, because you can expect things to be perfect and what have you. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I do want to kind of shift gears a little bit, because
Sure.
you have this very unique position in that you're sort of the overseer or mastermind, if you will, of multiple communities, and such that COVID has really kind of laying waste to a lot of things.
Sure.
Really, like, is this like a pure Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of thing? I mean, is it legitimately that simple? Like, people, like, we need food, we need shelter, people are worried about this, or is it people want to get back? Like, I guess what I'm asking for is, what where have you seen the needs, and did they match up with what you thought they would be?
Yes, but not as like they are way worse than we thought they were going to be.
Hmm.
So, I'll start here. See, so a little information about me, get personal, get to know me, right? So, I am an immunocompromised individual, right? So, when word back in February kind of hit that um, there was a really good chance that we were going to have an outbreak, and that there was a good chance for potentially like the need for self-isolation for those who could do it, and then we kind of moved into this situation of lockdown. My head was probably 3 or 4 weeks ahead of what we were seeing in government briefings, just because in general, as a human being, I've organized my life such that when it's flu season, I stay away from people. When it's and so kind of hearing wind of this, I was trying to think ahead about how CHR was going to kind of handle this.
Mhm.
So we worked really fast back in February with our management company partners, and we immediately established protocols that we were going to put in place in the event of a quarantine or in the event of a lockdown. And so we completely revamped our system so that we could guarantee that services would be uninterrupted. And so what we started doing is we created a system where every Monday my staff walks property, literally walks door to door, and delivers all of our curriculum for that week. Tuesday through Thursday, we are on Zoom calls literally all day, delivering curriculum, doing workshops, one-on-one case management, one-on-one tutoring with children that we've identified have a digital divide and don't have access to necessary tutors. For example, the majority of our parents read at a 6th to 8th grade reading level. So any of our students that are in middle school or any of our students that are in high school, their parents are not equipped to help them with their homework or help them with
Right.
their success. And so we've jumped in to offer that support. And so Tuesday through Thursday, we are 100% digital, working through Zoom, working through Google Hangouts, working through Google Voice, making sure our residents are taken care of. And then on Friday, we implemented a 24/7 emergency hotline for folks to be able to reach out for anything, anything as small as I need a roll of toilet paper to as big as my employer is telling me that I don't meet the criteria for unemployment. What do I do?
Mhm.
And so our emergency hotline went live March 13th and is going to stay live indefinitely. So it's just worked so well. And so it's going to stay live indefinitely for our program. But Friday has become emergency delivery day. So if a family has identified that they're out of food, if they've identified they're out of cleaning supplies, if they've identified they're out of critical medication and are isolated without transportation, we are making door-to-door deliveries to all of our folks that are isolated. This was done in an effort after we surveyed our entire community. We surveyed the entire state of Texas, and so that's about 15,000 individuals.
Wow.
And we found out that 38% of our residents didn't pay rent on April 1st.
Wow.
And 38% of our residents didn't pay rent on April 1st. 25% of our residents were fired without the promise of being hired back post-pandemic,
Right.
or post-lockdown. And 12.5% of that 25% were asking for employment opportunities immediately, regardless of quarantine. So they were looking for us to connect them to essential employers to get them employed immediately because their family was without benefits, without service, et cetera. And the primary function of our emergency hotline, while we thought it was going to be food, which it is, there's a lot of food, there's a lot of cleaning supplies, there's a lot of basic medical necessities, like masks or Tylenol or ibuprofen for fevers and things like that.
Right.
While there's a lot of that, the primary kind of non-essential, non-basic request was basically navigating benefits. People who had never, ever been on SNAP for food assistance, people who had never been on TANF for childcare assistance, people who had never been on these programs before because they were kind of just making do in their kind of impoverished, low-income category, were now needing access to this stuff. And so we were processing close to, I'd say, 100 new applications a week for the first month.
Wow.
For benefits. Yeah. So we've made it. We've made a shift. We've been very successful. We've had to hire extra staff. So where most nonprofits are saying they're cutting staff, cutting services, CHR has been in a completely different environment as it relates to that. But
Yeah.
we were able to do that because we were prepared. I don't know, I wouldn't say prepared because there was definitely some bumps in the road, but we at least were thinking about it before it happened.
Right. Yeah. You were making those contingencies.
We were thinking about it. We had some stuff written on paper. And as you well know, like anything you put on paper and then you put into practice rarely matches up.
Yeah.
But at least we had some ideas. We had some thoughts on paper, and then we worked out the kinks.
Yeah. I mean, it honestly, the most complex thing I'm thinking about as you're talking about it sounds to me like the logistics part of it all, did y'all already have a delivery system in place for certain things and it was just a matter of sort of reorganizing what it was, or how did y'all?
I literally have my staff members going out and shopping for this stuff, building these care packages and delivering them door to door.
That's incredible.
It's incredibly labor intensive. Like where everybody's talking about their COVID-19, like I've put on the COVID-19 because I've been at home eating at home all day. I can't like stop me from opening my fridge. Like my staff is like, are you kidding me? I walk 50,000 steps a day.
Yeah. No, that's that's just really astounding. I mean, and how do you, this I think is, it's also hard to measure. It's sort of related, but it's maybe a bit tangential. How do you find staff that are willing to, I guess, care that much or put themselves on the front line in that sense? I mean, it sounds like they're fairly dedicated people, going above and beyond. So,
well, I mean, our interview process is pretty thorough as it relates to like people caring. I mean, to get through a CHR interview, you have to really want the job. And what I mean by that is like, you're interviewed by me, you're interviewed by our chief of staff, you're interviewed by our residential program director. And then we give you a test, like you take an assessment that has, for lack of a better term, built-in difficulties. We basically give you an assessment that you can't technically complete by yourself unless you ask us questions. And what it is to force it. The idea of the assessment is to determine whether you are the type of person who thinks you're always right, or are you the type of person who's willing to ask questions and admit you don't know something. Right. Because for us, being an organization that's 100% digitally connected and almost zero connected in person, if you're not willing to speak up and ask questions, you inevitably will do something wrong and it will impact somebody's life. We deal in people's lives. We don't deal in people. Like, we're not dealing in gallons of milk or loaves of bread. We're dealing in people's lives here. And if you're not willing to ask a question and do something the right way, things could go badly very quickly. So anyway, if you make it through the CHR interview process, one, you have to really want the job. The second thing is, and this has been a really big concern for us right now, is we've hired 5 new people in the last 3 weeks. And so for us, one of the biggest concerns has been, are the people we hire that we're hiring today going to stay with us post-pandemic when potentially their previous employers ask them back, or when the job market opens up and there's more opportunity? Are they just with us right now because we're one of the few companies hiring, or are they with us because they really, really, really want to be with us and they're going to stay with us?
Right.
So we do have to worry about that, and we do kind of we do definitely put an emphasis on that in the interviewing process. But yeah, our folks are insanely dedicated. I'd say too that right now more than ever, a job is like gold. A paying job that you're still able to work, you're still able to get 40 hours, you're still able to get what I would consider above a living wage.
Right.
Is gold right now. So, but I think the other thing to think about too is we've gone above and beyond to keep our staff safe. So, where in the beginning, before we were in quarantine, we were knocking on people's doors and we were physically checking up on them. Now, on Mondays, we're literally dropping curriculum at the door and we're leaving. Nobody's knocking on doors. Nobody's touching anybody, nobody's seeing nobody's coming face to face. And when we make deliveries, we're doing everything via text. So we text them that the delivery's there and then we walk away. Nobody's actually seeing each other. Nobody's actually coming in contact. And so all of our protocols get updated once a week based on CDC guidance. So it went from like nobody in groups of 10, nobody in groups of 6, nobody in groups of 3. 6 feet was fine. No, it should be 10. No, it should be 20. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it changes weekly.
Yeah. I mean, I know that I work with a lot of food people, and it's a really dumb dance in a lot of ways, and you're just kind of like, I don't know how this is supposed to work, and I don't know how you're going to enforce it. And I know that you're going to, and I know that there's going to be a lot of arbitrary answers and questions. It just doesn't, nothing is going to be straightforward. And then for how long, who knows? I guess we're just going to have to live in this unknown scenario for whoever knows.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you already kind of alluded to a little bit of sort of the post-COVID, in that like y'all are going to keep this emergency hotline up for maybe good, maybe who knows how long exactly, but really, what does post-COVID look like for you as a business owner right now? I mean, is there, I'm not asking you to put a timeline to it necessarily, but like, when do you think, or what do you think, you'll keep? What do you think you probably want to add or, keep building on? And, is there anything that you're going to say, well, I found out that was completely useless, and, like after not needing it for 3 months or whatever, I don't need that anymore. So forget it,
Yeah. So I think, I don't know that we'll dump anything. Truthfully, I think, so previous to COVID, the only way we were in touch with our residents is if they came to us in the amenity center, right? So previous to COVID, we didn't have access to like rent rolls and certain things, but a lot of privacy regulations have been relaxed so that we can help people in isolated situations. Like, I'll give you an example. We have a resident who is blind. And so normally she goes to a translation service where she takes all of her documents and they literally read them to her because they have a legal agreement. But she's isolated. She can't travel. She's blind. There's no transportation service for her. And so all of her privacy regulations have been relaxed so that we can take her legal documents and her medical documentation and read it to her over the phone. And so a lot of that stuff has been relaxed. And so for the first time ever, my staff literally has touched 100% of our residents every single week. It's like, it's unprecedented. And so now that we've kind of established what that looks like and feels like, that's not going to change. And what I mean by that is from now on, we'll probably still do packet delivery every Monday, no matter what. Even if you're not actually physically coming to a service, we're going to drop off all that information. And there's going to be ways you can contact with us to follow up, because maybe you can't come to the financial literacy class at a certain time. That doesn't mean you shouldn't get the curriculum. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to review it. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to contact us and ask us questions. So we'll probably still end up doing day-to-day packet delivery on Mondays post-COVID. The other thing is, while we'll probably pull back from our 100% digital portfolio, what we probably still will do, now that we know people really like it and have the mechanism to engage in it, is we'll start probably doing Zoom calls and Zoom workshops on the lunch hour and after business hours. One of our biggest challenges is because we're located in the apartment facility, for people who work during the day, they're gone at work, so they're not able to come to our services. But if we did a digital call on Zoom during the lunch hour, or we did a digital call on Zoom at 6 or 7:30 at night, my staff can do it from home and people can access our services when they're at home.
Right.
So we'll probably keep that part of our Zoom arrangement. It's also allowed us to think through how we can provide services from my Texas staff to other states. So we have different requirements in every single state that we operate in. Texas by far has the most stringent requirements. And so for us, we operate across the board to the Texas level, but that's expensive in other states. So can we launch a digital platform in our other states to bring down the cost, but still perform services at that level? So we're going to do that. And I think I don't anticipate dropping the emergency hotline anytime soon or anytime in the future, frankly, because I think our residents have really loved the opportunity to have multiple people to reach out to. And what I mean by that is, most of my residents have gotten used to the idea that they have their singular service coordinator, right? Like they have their one coordinator that's dedicated to their property. I can call Miss Paula. I can call Miss Sarah. I can call Miss Zuli. But if Miss Zuli, Miss Sarah, or Miss Paula are on a call with somebody else, or they're doing packet delivery and you can't get a response and you're in an emergency situation, it's nice to have another hotline where somebody's going to respond within one business hour. And that person can emergency ping your RSC, or that person's going to call you back. Like literally, I man the hotline 8 hours every 2 days. So I've literally walked people through SNAP benefit applications. I've literally walked people through workforce legislation so that they know what they can tell their employer to make sure they get their benefits. And so sometimes we can resolve the call right then. Sometimes I need to ping their RSC because they need a delivery, or they need someone to come help or whatever. But yeah, I think that's what post-pandemic looks for us. Packet delivery every Monday, lunch hour after our Zooms, resuming in-person services during the day, resuming in-person after-school care, and then keeping that emergency hotline. I think where we're going to have to see a shift sooner rather than later, that we have yet to plan for, is we still have about 3 weeks. But in about 3 weeks, school is out, distance learning is over, so kids don't have anything to do during the day. And all of our school district issued technology, iPads, laptops, Chromebooks, all of that go back to the district. So that's one of the things we're going to be tackling here in the next 3 to 4 weeks, is figuring out, one, what kind of curriculum can we create to keep these students engaged during the summertime? And two, what are we going to do to assist in bridging that digital divide that school districts were bridging up until the beginning of summer?
Yeah, I mean that sounds complicated. Um,
Complicated, no. Expensive, yes.
yeah, I guess. Well, I mean that's good. You have a plan then. So, um,
It's whether I
so
can pay for the plan.
yeah, and speaking to that point, the pay point,
Yeah.
um, have you had to change your business model at all during this time, or do you expect that your business model will need to include other variables, or that we're going to have to open up this line that we weren't thinking of opening for a couple of years, but because of who knows what, we're going to need to be more creative. I mean,
Yes, the answer to that is yes. We did open up a new line of business the beginning of March 1st. And so we're hoping that's going to be helpful in kind of helping us recover. I've spent probably 4x per month more on supplies than we were planning on. Um, and so what I mean by that is, like, normally we have a supply budget for each site, which covers our emergency food pantry supply, covers like curriculum supplies, et cetera, et cetera. And when most of our families can go to the food bank for their food allotment that they get every month, or when we do monthly food fairs and they come see us for that stuff, that we can't do those things anymore. We can't do those things. Like, one, they can't get to the food bank, and two, even those massive food bank distributions that are doing, tens of thousands of people are in line for hours and hours and really days before trying to achieve that. And some of our folks, one, don't have transportation, two, don't have the means or childcare to leave their kids at home so that they can go do that. And so some of our folks are truly isolated.
right.
um, and so with that, I've spent about 4x what has been previously budgeted. And so in order to kind of climb out of that and still have money for normal operations come the end of the year, or whatever that means, or if I have to continue spending at 4x through the end of the year to kind of keep our families sustainable, then yeah, that new line of business is hoping to keep us afloat. The other thing too is I've been working with Eric Cooper at the San Antonio Food Bank to really serve our residents and to be a partner in serving our residents. And so, we, at this point, if grant dollars are available to help cover those additional expenses, when I say partner with Eric, I mean, we're the logistics, right? So we go to the food bank, we get all the food, we bring it and we deliver it.
Yeah.
But there's still a cost there, right? So like the food bank still charges 15 cents per pound for most things. Some things are completely free, and then some things are more expensive because they're higher. They're harder to come by, like meat and eggs and things like that. And so in that regard, yeah, we're working with folks on grant funds to put them to work. Our banking relationships, all of the banking foundations have grants that they're wanting to deploy for COVID purposes. And so in this particular time, yeah, we've applied for some grants that are specifically being used strictly for supplies, not for operations, and only for supplies that are necessary immediately.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I guess irrespective, I guess there's always pivots, whether big or small. So
Yeah. Yeah.
evident here too. So,
Yeah.
um, well, I know that we're getting up to the 12 o'clock hour, and I don't really want to keep you much longer, right? So,
No worries.
just thinking through sort of in finality, if you will, of the conversation. Really, what advice, if you have any, or what kind of thoughts would you have for somebody looking to either build something anew or rebuild out of a situation like this, business or not, it doesn't matter.
What advice would I give to someone rebuilding? Um, let's see. I mean, well, I mean, like in any situation, right? I think one, evaluate your expenses. I would do some secondary customer research as best you can. Because I think the customer you originally thought you had or thought you were targeting probably isn't the same person anymore. I think a lot of our folks are living in unique situations that they themselves didn't even think they were going to be living in prior to this. And so, like to your point, where folks are saying my funds are locked up for 3 years, or I may not be able to give for 3 years, or blah 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 blah. I think we're in a very unique situation. So I would say, one, review expenses, see what's necessary, see what's not necessary. Two, I would say, review your customer, truly understand who they are again, see if there's an opportunity for you to pivot or expand. And by expand, I mean expand your customer. And then expand your definition of your customer is what I mean. And then three, evaluate your communication channels, right? So where, as your customer changes, so does their consumption of information. So if you are previously working with a millennial kind of type customer who's focusing on digital technology, digital information, social media, that's one marketing channel. But then I think secondarily, if you start to expand your customer to those who may still be financially secure, maybe a little older, et cetera, how they consume information and gather information is very differently. So I would review that too. And then from there, hit the pavement. I think at this point, no job is too good or no person is too good for any job at this point, right? So like I said, as CEO, I'm helping people with benefits applications. As CEO, I'm answering the emergency line. As CEO, I'm making check deposits and I'm filing HR folks and I'm writing grants and I'm handling, employee complaints. Whatever it takes, whatever's needed. People need to be prepared to do that. So if typically you didn't like making cold calls, well, get over it. Make some cold calls. If you didn't like going door to door, passing out flyers, well, too bad, get over it. Like if that's the only way you're going to reach some people, then just get over it. I think you have to be willing to really hustle and do whatever's necessary. I mean, I'll give you my example with like Buried. I'm running the scheduling. I'm designing the website. Be prepared to do grunt work because for a little while, the only person you're going to be able to afford is yourself.
How true. Yeah, that's sage
and even
advice.
At that, you're not going to be able to pay you what you think you're worth. So
for sure. Oh man. Oh, stark reality.
Yeah, it burns.
Okay, well, hey, I super appreciate you taking
Thanks
the
for
time.
having me.
I really enjoyed the conversation. I feel like I learned a lot. And I think that there's a lot of useful lessons across the board and just, some fresh perspective. So I really appreciate you coming on. If people want to get in touch with you, is there like a best way of doing so?
Absolutely. So in general, the email that's attached to my hip is Meghan, MEGHAN at Rise, RISE, Civic, CIVIC consulting.com. So awesome. That's the one I'm checking all the time.
I dig it. Yeah, well, like I said, I super appreciate it, Meghan. I can't say enough about how much I appreciate your insight and your knowledge, and I'm glad that you were able to share it with the folks that we have. So
awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yep. I dig it.